Okay, we're live. It's working.
Praise be.
Holy hell.
Wow. Well, now we get to really practice what we preach and ground.
We had some technical difficulties, just so you all know why we're running late. And I'm a little frazzled.
Put some lipstick on, you'll feel better.
Okay, great. So let's just start by saying who we are. So will you all, the two of you, start that so I can unfrazzle?
Muse, let's play some tennis. We're the Verdant Collective faculty. What are we doing?
Yes. Well, today we're here to talk about the construct of body image, this thing that we've all been fed that isn't actually really a thing. Doesn't come natively from us. So just as a headline.
And you want to just say your names too? That's more what I meant.
Hi, I'm Chris Muse.
What does it really matter? Hi, I'm Chris Jan.
My name's Alyssa. So we all teach together in this crazy program, crazy fun, wild program that we call the Verdant Collective. And we have an upcoming virtual program, which is really our first program through the Verdant Collective. Some of us have done virtual programs on our own, but it's our first Verdant Collective inspired virtual program starting May 7th.
Yep.
Is that right? If you go to theverdantcollective.com, you can see that program and read more about it and sign up for it. You can see other things that we have coming in the fall. Cross your fingers. Things like that get to happen.
Something will happen. Yes.
And there's a free program that we offered a couple months ago, 30 Days of Erotic Wellness, that you can also check out.
You can still join it now.
Yep, you can still do it. And there's still all kinds of community happening through that program on that website. So you can check that out. And the upcoming program is called Rejecting Body Image, quotes, and Claiming Intrinsic Beauty. And this is something that all three of us have had really different journeys and experiences with, as I think is really representative of what happens for women, females in our current culture, is that, you know, we're all impacted by how we're told our bodies are supposed to be and what they're supposed to be able to do and how they're supposed to look. But how we all experience that varies so much because of when we were born, the kinds of families that we were born into, the ways that our bodies look. And this is part of the power of being in a collective. This is why we teach together instead of just one of us, is that we get to share a wider range of experiences and perspectives on things.
Including what was really the in some ways, at least for me, the epiphany behind the whole conversation to begin with was the thing, realizing that we've been told for so long that the best way to deal with this body image thing is to just get a good body image, to just trade the bad one in for a good one. And we've got actually vast psychological and psychotherapeutic tools and techniques and lineages that teach us how to do that. And realizing some months ago, that the thing that draws all of our experiences together is that we have this idea of body image. We have any concern whatsoever about how our bodies look in terms of their in terms of our wellness and culture, in the culture, as an effect or a measure of our wellness and our worth in culture. That's the thing that is the connecting thread through all these different experiences of body image growing up and different generations and different sizes. And it's such a sign of a pathological, toxic culture that it offers this primary way of knowing ourselves to begin with. It's what if we didn't consider it? And it's such a sign of
Amazing. Yeah, you know, so when I think about this, it's really for us, it's belonging to our body. It's being at home in our body. And so the whole idea of loving the skin you're in or accepting it feels a little bit more like the pushing out to, you know, mind over matter. I'm going to get this thing. I'm going to love this thing. I'm going to just accept this thing. And it's doing it in that way is still looking at it from the lens of what does my body look like? And can I accept what my body looks like instead of, oh my goodness, this is my body. This is the miraculous functions that it has and does. This is the power that it has. This is my vehicle that carries me through the world. And I belong here.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like a primary belonging that we miss when we try and reorient our body image from a negative one to a positive one. We're still doing it from this visual kind of outside in thing.
Mm-hmm.
Totally. So I titled this, I didn't even check in with the two of you about it, but taking our bodies back. And some of it, this particular Facebook Live, and some of that was inspired by this article that I came across in Cosmopolitan. Cosmo.
We're gonna go there. We're going
We're
there.
gonna go there.
Oh my God.
Because
fasten your seatbelts.
I don't know if you need to. Because what it hit on, I think, for all three of us in the short conversation we had about it, was that this isn't just about body image. It's not just about how we look. It's about all of the things that we're told about our bodies, and how they're supposed to be, how they function, what parts there are. And it also includes the things that we're not told about our bodies.
Mm.
For example, most of us, I don't know anyone actually, when they were growing up, hopefully this is changing. I have my fingers crossed a little bit, but I don't imagine it is, that we're not really taught anything about our arousal anatomy. And so it just doesn't even exist in some ways in our minds, because it exists because you can feel it. But if you're not taught that it's there, there's a way that it can just sort of, it's like you don't have the same access to it as maybe you would if someone said, hey, you have all of this erectile tissue and all of these nerve endings, and here's all of these incredible things that it can do. You're going to have a really different relationship to it than if it's just not spoken about at all. And so this article in Cosmo, I'll put a link in the comments here for you. But it was the title of it was, or is, Your G-Spot Doesn't Exist. Is that what the title was? It was something like
that. It's something like Newsflash or This Just In Ladies or something like that, or whatever.
And in some ways, it's righting some wrongs that have happened about how there's been this incredible focus over the last over 30 years around the G-spot. And it's like this holy grail of pleasure. And if you're not finding it, and if you can't access it, then you're really missing out. And
if you have any problems, it's because you haven't accessed it. So just the endless. Yes.
Yeah. And there's become this huge focus on the G-spot. And now they're just saying it doesn't actually exist. Like science is saying it doesn't exist. And I want to be careful here because we're all big fans of science. We're not in the camp of science is, there's some people who just completely disregard it, and that's not at all that's not what I'm about. I won't speak for the two of you, because I want to be careful there, because there's so many wonderful, important things that have come into existence and kept us all alive. I wouldn't be alive if we hadn't figured out some of the things we'd figured out with science.
Yes.
So we're not dismissing it completely, but there's this big problem that continues to happen, and it seems really specific around women's sexuality. that we're told so many things about our bodies and there's so much conflicting information and it's really confusing.
Yes.
Okay, go. I said so many things.
You said so many things. It was wonderful. Yeah. The thing that I think the article was trying to do was something that's sort of feminist in nature, historically feminist in nature, which is just relieve us of the pressure that's inflicted on us by, primarily Western industrial culture or dominant culture. In this case, it is Western medicine that decided there was a thing, and that thing did a thing, and everything just gets narrower and narrower and narrower. Our options get narrower and narrower and narrower until we're told, you have a G-spot, it's this big, it's right here, it does this, end of story. And that's the story of women's lives. That's the story of women's lives in Western industrial culture is, you are a thing, you have a thing, you do a thing, this is it. And so I loved a lot of the references this article used, which really did not support you don't have a G-spot. It supported, you have a landscape of anatomy. It's yours to explore. This gets back to what you were asking about, Alyssa. What would it be like if we were introduced to our bodies in a way of, there are these things that defy science. The clitoris defies science. It certainly exists. And we don't know the evolutionary function or reason for the clitoris. But it's here, and you have this thing, you have all this erectile tissue, you have all these nerve endings, you have all this capacity, and your particular way of revving your engine and purring and humming and feeling pleasure and tending to your pleasure will be unique to you. Who cares what we call it? It doesn't matter. And so I feel like the article was trying to do that. But once again, it did the very thing that we have had done to us for really centuries now, which is, let me tell you about your body, woman. And boy, does that get our hackles up, huh? I mean, we were
certainly gets yours up.
just like, back off, just shut up with your, I will tell you about my body if I want to tell you about my body. But where do we get the permission, back to our course and what our course hopes to do? Where do we get the permission to choose where we put our attention and to choose what we put our attention on, and who gives us permission, and who makes it safe, and who will explore with us, and who will say, oh my God, if that, what about this? Well, if this, what about this?
Yeah, when we take these concepts, even, yes, the scientific name, the Grafenberg spot, which is also, we are proponents of not calling it that. That's a male doctor who didn't have any female parts, so obviously didn't really know how it felt or what was possible. Urethral sponge is much more, well, that's the word that we usually use. And it's also a much more neutral term. We all have a urethral sponge. Where our nerve endings are on it, how it feels, if it likes to be touched, where it likes to be touched is really different. And so adding in the nourishment of an open-minded and curious exploration versus, it's this thing and I have to find it. Again, like to your point, Christiana, it narrows it. Whereas if we're, what is nourishing here? What feels good here? And if I go in as an explorer, something the sensations will radically change between minute 1, 5, 20, and 30. So yeah, the concept of really becoming belonging to ourselves through the open-minded and curious exploration, back to being children. I've got a 9-year-old stepdaughter. She's got zero concept of body image right now. I've actually been testing it a little bit here and there, and it's neutral for her. And I hope to continue to bring that to her. In fact, I have kind of a funny story this morning. I've started my cycle yesterday, and so I'm bleeding kind of heavy. So I got out of the shower this morning and I'm putting on my oil, and I just feel some blood dripping out, and I just let it because I was putting on oil. I didn't realize that it was like splashing on the floor and kind of dripping everywhere. And she comes in and she sees the floor, and we've definitely talked about menstruation and periods and cycles and stuff. And she takes a look, and I said, "Oh gosh, I'm bleeding on the floor. Oh, let me pick that up." And I put it in the trash, and we just kind of went on about our day. It wasn't a deal. And I thought, oh, this is so good that she knows that this happens. It's not scary, and I'm feeling a little bit run down from it and things like that. But that this is my body. It's the thing that it does. And there's no part of me that has to go like this, don't say that, or, oh, that's not good, or, oh, I better clean that up, before anyone can see. And that these things are changing the paradigm for our children.
Mm-hmm. You go, Alyssa.
It just brings me back to why this program that we're offering, the body image course, as we refer to it, even though it's so much broader than that. Mm-hmm. But we're teaching it. It's not a pre-recorded show up, get this information, take it into your life and go. It's a group program where we're bringing women together to be learning together, because so much of what we find helps shift our relationship to our bodies and get us really inhabiting them and telling a different story about ourselves in the world, is getting to have the kind of experiences that you're providing for your stepdaughter, Muse, where we're just in community and we're getting to see how bodies actually are from one moment to the next, and exploring bodies together and just seeing bodies and watching how they move and how they find pleasure, and getting to be a part of that. This is, of course, the Verdant Collective. We won't be doing all of this kind of stuff can't do most of this in an online program. We have to go about it in a different way, but getting to see and feel and hear about these very real experiences that we probably would have had were we to live in a more communal way, or if our families, I certainly knew about menstruation when I was a kid. My mom's a nurse. She was very open about the details of that, but those sorts of moments certainly didn't happen. It was all very private. And so taking these things that are kept so private and even just talking about them can really revolutionize how we relate with them ourselves.
It's so true. It is communities at the heart of all of this. I think it's the lack of community that allowed these stories to take root in the first place. These stories that use words like phrases like body image. I just imagine. What things would look like if we didn't. What stories would still be being told. And we have a rich history of stories that speak to, and a rich history of sculpture. Some of the oldest sculpture we have excavated from old communities archaeologically around the world show, so many of us know this, show abundant bodies, female bodies, that are so much representative of the earth abundance and of the roundness and the fertility and generosity and even just in a few generations back in some older countries, as I was doing some of my ancestral work, just discovering which bodies were prized in Estonia, which bodies were loved, realizing that my thick calves, which are in this culture, are just like, what is wrong with your legs? Gosh, those are some big legs you've got there, some big calves you've got there. And then doing some research when I was knitting and realizing that so many stockings to this day are knit in this shape that just looks so strange, only to find out that strong legs are genetically preponderant in Estonia, and that women are prized for their strong legs. And we know that in this culture, we're we're coming out of it a little bit, but we're one of the skinniest, sort of skinny obsessed cultures on the planet at this point. And just one of, unfortunately, because it appears to be a trend that's catching on. But stories get to be remembered and rewritten according to the times and according to what we are experiencing in our bodies, and the dreams we have and the visions we have and the experiences we have with each other when we're in this deep community. And when we do that in community, when we start to reweave these stories that speak of our sovereignty and our beauty and all its expressions, then we do that thing that is really a particular thing we do in the Verdant Collective, which is making ourselves inhospitable to these absurd introjects, just deadly, and in some ways just absurd. Like, you know, how did these things become so powerful that they're, I did some lookings, $8.1 billion spent 2 years ago just on makeup. Just on makeup, $8.1 billion just on
money.
Lipstick and foundation and eyeliner. Yeah. Yeah, so community and stories, reweaving stories of relevance that are guideposts for us.
I know for me, Chris and I, Muse and I, were sort of students of this work, I guess we could say. About 6 years ago was our sort of initial introduction. And is that right? Whatever, timing doesn't matter. But there was a thing for me of getting to see other women's bodies and to feel so much reverence and care and awe at their bodies, and then hearing how I would talk to myself about my body and feeling the disconnect between those two things. I could have so much appreciation no matter what this woman's body looked like. It was just like, wow, look at you. Look at what your body has done. Look at what it can do. Look at these amazing things and how it's put together. And it's so different than this woman over here. And isn't this just fascinating? And it makes sense. And it's impacted how you've lived your life. And of course, you're, you know, just all of these things, just this incredible curiosity and wonder. And then just how different that was from how I spoke to myself about my own body and the introjects that were coming in with myself. And that was what really started to shift those stories for me, because I got to then bring all of the wonder and curiosity I had for these other bodies into my own. And it's still, you know, it's a ongoing, probably will be a lifelong process. Who knows? But
because it doesn't exist in a vacuum. You know, you come back to your own home and your own life, and you are immediately assaulted by these images and these expectations and these recent small stories that really undermine us. So it requires a daily, really, in my experience, fierce, almost warriorship of, I will not consider you, you know, talking to that story inside me that I hear, you know, as I head down the hall to the bathroom or whatever, and there's that big mirror there, and whatever happens in that moment of even the positive things of, because it happens to be a mirror, as you both know, that makes us look tall and slender. So it's like, nice mirror. Oh, I don't look so bad today. And it's like, what are you saying? I will not say that. That is my body. It just brought me down the hall. It's powerful. It's strong. It's 54. It's aging. So it's like a warriorship, and we need each other to remind us of that. But I love what you're talking about, Alyssa, the thing that happens when we get to be with each other in our pleasure and in our own discovery of what these bodies are capable of. It's impossible not to fall in love. And I remember the first time I ever got to touch a female body that was, in this way that was just so beautifully round. And of course, this woman had her own journey with body image. And there were, with a team of us, just loving her up and just moving my hands over her body and these mountains and these rolls and these valleys. It just was exquisite. And then she was able to see us, just this body is so abundant, and it holds, the bigger it is, the more it holds. And we all got to go on such a ride. And it was really one of the seminal moments for me in this work of this is the work that gets these stories out of us, is being with each other, with each other's bodies, and the awe and the reverence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, I was just going to say, of course, because the program that we're talking about that starts in May is virtual. So that kind of a thing won't be happening. And we're still in the process of figuring out how we're going to be translating this into a virtual format. So,
and we are planning live courses though, again.
Yes, in-person things.
In person. Yeah. So we will be able to do that. But from a virtual standpoint, I mean, something that I think could translate that really made an impact on me from the beginning is right now, it's so alive as we're talking about this, you know, the three of us writing and speaking and to each other. It just brings up those, oh my gosh, yeah, me too stories, or, oh, that reminds me of this time when, you know, I go through life with this sort of concept of like, oh, body image isn't really deep, hasn't gotten its claws really so deeply into me. But in the sharing of the stories, I start to see, oh my God. And I have that thought from that moment when that thing happened, you know, when my mom was always like, she's still, hi, pretty girl. Like that's how she picks up the phone. And I'm always like, I don't believe you. Because I once had a boyfriend that said to me, sometimes I look at you and I think she's not a pretty girl. And so I have these like conflicting things. What? So just to hear other women's stories can really bring up all kinds of different things. In some of the ways that I have and do value the function and the form of my body, and in other ways how I've rejected or tried to hide particular areas or certain places that strategically, you know, don't get looked at or seen or felt. And really just being in community unearths all of these things that could otherwise sometimes just get pushed down into the shadows or put into the corner of the closet and not really dealt with. It brings it up to get dealt with so that it can get integrated and healed. And the shared experiences and also the disparate experiences just really help. Again, I'm just going to keep coming back to belonging to and coming home to my own body, and also in support of that for the community. And that feels like it was one of it is a really big impact for me about why to take this into the community and why to speak it and how to hear it and let it land in my heart.
So can we give them something they can do to take their bodies back? Anyone who's watching this? Just something small, some kind of practice. Maybe each of us has one, or we just have one between the three of us that can be, you know, the beginnings of that process.
I always come to touch. I mean, that's definitely probably my primary sense. So that's the thing that I consider and think about is really coming home. Is just is self touch. So I'll start with that. And if you want to fill in what that could mean, or I could keep going.
I think it can be that simple. Doesn't have to be more complicated, but just like, and I think some of what I hear you saying too is touch without an agenda or a direction. Because so often, I mean, we're touched by other people therapeutically, or because they maybe want something from us, or sort of absent-mindedly and affectionately. But rarely are we touched. And then when we touch ourselves, it can be sort of a similar thing. We're aiming towards an orgasm or toward a particular experience happening. So
I would add another layer to that. Not only without an agenda, but touching yourself as much as possible without the story, without the judgment of, so if I'm touching myself, I might get to I do this, it happens regularly for me. I'll get to a place where I can feel muscle and bone and I notice my system settling. And I come down to a place where I maybe can feel some stretch marks and I can totally feel some stretch marks and some totally sort of what really soft flesh, and then my nervous system like, oh, I'm not like, okay, keep going to where the hip, I can feel my hips protruding. Oh, that must be okay then. So not that, just how do we put our awareness, like Muse, it seems this is what you really know how to do, put your beautiful brain in the tips of your fingertips, not your mind that has all sorts of stories, but just your sensory brain. So what am I actually feeling? And part of this, we'll get to notice how hard it is to do that without story of, oh, that's okay. Oh shit, that's fat. Oh, that's okay. Oh, so without agenda, and as much as we can, just noticing and putting aside the, oh, I have to do some more sit-ups, or, oh, that's not, like, this is just, I'm just feeling, can I just feel my body?
Yeah, and I would say even any language or names, to just try and just let that stuff go. Not even, oh, this is my forehead. Just not even this is a contour. It's maybe a bone. You can, but it's like less words is better. Less labeling is better in this case. There are other times for other, distinctly naming parts and things.
Yeah.
But just in this whole, even in the conversations we were having earlier, talking about the G-spot and does it exist or doesn't it exist and what is it called and what is it for, that starts to get us all wrapped up in our minds. So for me, it's yeah, how much can I sink into the textures and the sensations of the textures?
It's a lot of what we do in the Verdant Collective, and really everything, and people have already noticed this in our writing, is that we look through and teach through an ecological lens. And so one of the things I would advocate is stripping away Western industrial language for, this is my G-spot, and scientific language, this is my urethral sponge, to what is this? This is a soft mossy mound. This is a wet river bed. This is a dry hollow valley. This is, putting big, beautiful, sort of ecological or mythic terminology on our bodies, where the small stories of the dominant culture, they're way too small to take hold. So if we are going to use words, and how about if they're metaphor? How about if we track the landscape of our body and we remap it, imagining that we're exploring all this beautiful ecological terrain. I mean, we are.
I love that.
Yeah, that's exactly where I was going to go, actually, was that it can be, if it feels difficult to get out of the sort of valuing, because we can be evaluating as we're touching. It's like, oh, this part's good, this part's bad. Oh, I like this part, I don't like this part.
Yes.
But coming into exploring your body as a landscape out in the wild. Or you don't look at a mountain and say like, oh, that mountain's too tall and that one's too round, and that one shouldn't be that way, and this stream shouldn't be coming down like this, it should be going this other, we don't do that. And so bringing that kind of attention to your body as if you were interacting with a landscape can be really, helps me in moments. For sure. Okay, so where can people find us? People can find us at theverdantcollective.com. I'm going to put this in the comments.
Oh, good. Thanks, Alyssa.
I'll get that article loaded up there as well, the Cosmo article,
You
Cosmopolitan.
have to, right? We should.
Just because
What
we've
was
talked
that?
about it.
Just because we talked about it. All right.
Yeah, and there are some good points in there, and there's some interesting statistics, and but I think
Yes.
the main message is let the information go and see what you find in your body through your own explorations.
And the other thing I do want to say there that certainly applies to our own body image, because we there's the genital hole, Almas's idea, and there are ways in which if it hasn't been named, it doesn't exist. Well, in this article, there's an implication of if it doesn't have sensation, it doesn't exist.
Or if it doesn't have pleasurable sensation, because they talk about sensation in other ways, but that it doesn't feel good. And so
that frustration, that if there's frustration around a thing, then we should just bag the whole thing altogether. 40% of women feel frustrated because now in their sex and don't want to explore with their partner because they can't find the G spot, or the G spot doesn't have sensation, or the G spot doesn't feel good, and it's so much more complex than that. So even when you're hanging out with your body in this invitation we're making to take time to slow down and be with whatever is occurring. And we always like to say numbness is a sensation. So not feeling anything is a thing your body it's a response your body has adapted with. And so hanging out in that terrain, you get to a valley or a little hill that feels prickly. It feels like a fire happened there, and you just hang out with it. And just because it doesn't feel good doesn't mean it's not important. And just because it doesn't have sensation doesn't mean nothing's there.
Okay. Any other last words?
So do we need to say anything more about the details starting in just a little over 3 weeks from today?
3 weeks from today, May 7th.
We've
got 3 virtual offerings through the rest of the year. And this first one is Reclaiming Intrinsic Beauty.
Yeah. Not and even then, that other part.
Maybe we need to change.
And we are still planning our offering of our full 4-month deep dive Verdant Collective course. It's a course for women only, live community course experience, really, 4 weekends, 1 per month for 4 months. And all the details are on our website, theverdantcollective.com. And you can find out a lot more about us there.
And then if you have questions, you can leave them in the comments here. You can also send us direct messages, and then you can find a good email address if you want to get a hold of all 3 of us is info@, I always forget if it's Institute for Erotic Intelligence or okay. So right. I'll put this in the comments also. I can't type and talk at the same time.
Institute for Erotic Intelligence.
I just can't type and say it out loud at the same time.
Wonderful. Yeah.
It's a long name.
Yeah. Yes. And we're all in, everyone, the whole world is in a flux and a flow and an uncertainty, but if you're drawn to apply for the longer course, then just apply, and we'll all find our way back into community with each other in physical proximity eventually. So yeah, so come be with us in one way or another.
Thanks for joining us.
Yeah,
and
thanks
it's
for
fun
watching.
As always to be talking with the 2 of you.
Always.
And the 2 of you can stay on. I'm gonna end our live stream now. See you all soon.
Thank you. Bye.